Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and this is the fourth chapter for the principles of flight, which is stall. So this is a bit lengthy chapter, so I want you guys to pay attention and watch it in parts so you guys don't lose interest. So let's begin with it. Also, I wanted to mention, since I'm making these videos for free for you guys, so the most you guys could do is like and subscribe my channel. It would mean a lot to me. Alright, so let's begin. So what exactly is stall? Stall is the loss of altitude and control when you cross your critical angle of attack. So I'm going to show you guys a video of an aircraft stalling, so you guys had a good idea of what exactly is stall and how it happens. Okay, so the video you saw, it was an aircraft stalling. So did you see how that guy was pulling back his control column? So he was actually he was in the pitch, he was pitching up, but then after a certain angle of attack, he lost all his lift, and then the aircraft pitched down, right? So he also spinned in that video. So his aircraft was also spinning. So I'll explain that to you what spin is, because it's going to come later in the chapter. So what is stall exactly? It's the loss of altitude and control when you cross the critical angle of attack. So as you saw, that aircraft was pitching down, right? So it was going to lose altitude. So what is your critical angle of attack? I hope you remember from the previous videos. Critical angle of attack is when your aircraft can't produce enough lift for your to maintain a level flight. Alright. So what happens when you increase your angle of attack? When you increase your angle of attack, your adverse pressure gradient. This is your adverse pressure gradient. It increases, right? And then also, if you remember, what happens to your transition point? So what is transition point? So this is my aerofoil. This is my smooth air, and this is my turbulent air. So the point where it's transitioning from this smooth boundary layer to this turbulent air is called transition point. So if I keep increasing my angle of attack, so first, if let's say if it was here, it's gonna be here, then it's gonna be here, then it's gonna be here. So this is what is actually producing lift, right? This is not producing lift. So this is producing lift. So if this decreases, my lift is decreasing, and I need some amount of lift to maintain a level flight, right? So if I don't have enough lift, I'm going to lose my altitude and lose also my controls. So this is what we call stall. So yeah, so now here I am going to show you, this is a graph, all right, for an asymmetrical airfoil, all right, because if you see, it's reducing lift even when it's less than zero, because that's a characteristic of an asymmetrical airfoil. So yeah, so you see at 16 degrees, the CL is reducing. So what does this tell you? That your aircraft has stalled. So there's not much to understand in this graph, just this part. So there are a few terms I want you to know. Alright, so the first is going to be buffet. It's nothing but when a turbulent stream of air strikes any part of your airframe. Uh, let's say turbulent air hitting your airframe. I mean, there's not much to explain here, so I hope you get it. And then the next is going to be flutter. So what exactly is flutter? When vibrations occurring in an aircraft match the natural frequency of the structure. So let's say due to any reason there is any vibration in your aircraft and it matches the frequency of the structure. So what happens is, if they're not damped out, so if I don't reduce them, the oscillations can increase. So they're gonna keep increasing if I don't damp them. If I don't damp them, then the oscillation will keep increasing. So in return, this is gonna damage the structure. Alright, so this was just a few things that I wanted you to know. So there are a few type of wings. So I hope you remember what type of wing this is. So this is a rectangular wing. Then we have the swept back wing. So let's just say this is the fuselage of the aircraft. So if the wing is like this, right? This is a swept back wing. I'm sorry. So I think this one wing is enough. So this is swept back wing. So we're going to study a few stall characteristics about these wings. So let's move ahead and alright, so now we're going to discuss the stall characteristics for the rectangular wing. So basically when we talk about rectangular wing, it has the ideal stall characteristics. So when I say ideal stall characteristics, what do I mean? So it stalls at the root instead of the tip. So the thing is you prefer root stall over tip stall because you have your aileron over here. So if you stall at your tip first, you're gonna lose your aileron effectiveness and you won't be able to control the aircraft. Whereas when you stall your root, you don't have any control surface over here except for your flaps. So this is why you prefer to stall at the root. And also, if you remember that wingtip vortices, they reduce your effective angle of attack, right? When this is reduced, this also delays your tip stall. Alright. So, and also there's one more advantage when you stall at your root first. So let's say this is, I'll draw the entire aircraft over here. Let's say this is your root, and then when you stall here, then there's turbulent airflow, right? So what do you have behind? Which control surface you have behind? You have your elevator, right? So when this turbulent airflow hits this, you get a buffeting warning because what is buffet? It's a turbulent stream of air that strikes any part of your airframe. So when this turbulent airflow is striking your elevator, then you get it's type of a stall warning for your aircraft. So it can help you understand that you are reaching your critical angle of attack. So this is the other benefit of having a rectangular wing. So let's move forward to swept back wing. Alright. So what is swept back wing? So this is my aircraft. This is my fuselage. It goes like this. So this is my swept wing, right? So alright. So first I want to explain you why we use swept wing in the first place. So in this case, when you when you fly, so let's say this is my aerofoil, alright. So what happens when I fly at the speed of sound? When I fly at the speed of sound, there are going to be shock waves that form on my aerofoil. So let's say this is a shock wave. I'll show you a video of a shock wave. So what happens? So that shock wave is also creating a lot of drag. So of course, modern airliners they want to fly fast, and if they fly too fast, they're gonna create shock waves on their aerofoil, which would give them a lot of drag and make it not very ideal for them. So what happens with swept back wing? Let's say this is your airflow, right? Alright. So what's happening over here is this. Let's say this is the total airflow. This is the airflow that's going on your wing. It gets divided into two parts. Let's say this is spanwise flow, and then this is your chordwise flow. So it's type of vector. Chordwise. Alright. So let's say this was 200 knots, your total air, and your spanwise. Now since it has been divided, let's say this has become 40 knots, and this has become 160 knots. So if you see this, even though the actual speed is 200 knots, this part which is actually creating lift, it has become 160 knots. So in a way you're delaying shock wave because the air is accelerating slower on your wing over here, right? So I hope it makes sense to you. But the issue with this is that when you're flying slow, this wing is gonna have bad slow speed characteristics. Alright. So to fix that, of course, we have your flaps and your slats to increase your camber and then in return increase your lift. So yeah, so when we're talking about the spanwise flow, the thing is this does not accelerate. This accelerates over the aerofoil because of the shape, right? This is the shape, you know, right? This accelerates over here. But this, it's not accelerating. It stacks over the wingtip over here, making this feel like it's flying slower than the wing root. So what happens? The worst part of swept back wing is it stalls at the tip. So what happens when you stall at the tip? You have your, first of all, you lose your aileron effectiveness. So you have your aileron over here. You lose it, all right? It's no more effective because this is turbulent airflow, right? How are you going to use your aileron with turbulent airflow? And so let's say what happens. So if this was the wing before, all right. So let's say the CP was somewhere here. Now when this wing has become useless since it has stalled, the CP is going to move forward. So it's going to move forward and also inward. So what happens when your CP is moving forward? It gives you nose up characteristics. So in case of your rectangular wing, it gives you nose down characteristics. So what happens when your nose, when you're pitching down, or let's say when your nose is going down, your angle of attack is decreasing, right? It's decreasing. So you're automatically solving your stall issue. But in this case, when your nose is going up, you're increasing the angle of attack. You're making the situation worse than it already is, right? I hope it makes sense. So let's go to the next topic, which is going to be ways to prevent stall. Alright, so now we're going to discuss ways to prevent stall. So the first way is by using stall strips. So what happens? So let's say this is your wing, right? So near the root, what we do? So let's say this is the aerofoil near the root. So what exactly are small stall strips? They are small strips that are placed near the leading edge of the root. So they look somewhat like this, all right? So what they actually do is that they make the air turbulent over here, all right? So when you're making the air turbulent over here, what you're basically doing is that you're promoting root stall. And then again, when you have elevator behind over here, you're giving yourself a type of warning for the stall, all right? I hope it makes sense. Then we have the second type is going to be vortex generator. So in case of vortex generators is that what they do, so I'll draw a wing over here. So let's say this is not a wing but an aerofoil. So vortex generators, they're on the leading edge and they shape like this. So what they do is when they're kept at an angle. So when the air passes over it, it creates a type of vortex. And then of course, if you see at the diagram, what happens? So this is your aerofoil. So this is boundary layer, right? This first layer is like the boundary layer. So it has low energy over here, right? And the air above it. So this is high energy air. So what this is doing, it's mixing the high energy air and the low energy air, right? And it's adding energy into this, so it delays the separation. I hope this makes sense. Now let's go. So the next one is washout. So what happens basically in washout is that your, so let's say this is your wing. All right. So the wing is twisted in a way that the angle of incidence. So do you remember the angle of incidence? What is that? It's the angle between your chord and the longitudinal axis, right? So the angle of incidence at the root is higher than the angle of incidence at the tip. So basically the root will exceed the critical angle before the tip. So this is a way to promote root stall. Alright, so the next way to prevent stall. And so, okay, so basically let's say this is your swept wing. So what exactly is the reason why a swept wing is on a stall? It's because of the span-wise flow, right? The one that's flowing like this. So what if we put fences like this to prevent a span-wise flow? So these fences are called wing fence that prevent a span-wise flow on a swept wing. I hope it makes sense. So for the next one, Waterlawns, it's basically like a wing fence but below the wing. So let's say this is your aerofoil. So it's somewhat below the wing to prevent stall. So have you seen an engine pylon? So of course the engine is not directly connected to your wing like this, right? So there's a structure like this. Sorry, there's a structure like this, and then this is your engine, right? So this is called an engine pylon, which is basically a waterlon. I hope it makes sense. So yeah, we are done with the ways to prevent stall. The next one is gonna be the artificial stall warning devices. Alright. So the first one is gonna be your stick shaker. So as the name is pretty self-explanatory, what happens? Let's say this is your control column, alright, and then let's say this is somehow your control column is connected to your aircraft. Let's say so there's going to be a device here which is called the stick shaker, which vibrates it. So you get a buffeting type of stall warning because of a stick maker, and it can also be coupled with a noise maker. Alright, so you get a noise maker, which so you get an oral warning too. And yeah, so the stall warning basically, of course, you don't want the stall warning when the stall is happening. You want it before it happens, right? So the stall warning is usually for 5 knots or 5% ahead of the stall speed. All right. So there's one more way that you can get your stall warning. It's called the flapper switch. So it's basically, let's say this is your airfoil, all right. So it's located somewhere on the leading edge in a way that at when you're at a high angle of attack, the stagnation point moves to its underside. All right. So this, you know what is stagnation point, right? So this is my airflow. So at one point, the airflow is gonna be, the velocity is gonna be zero, and the static pressure is gonna be highest. So at an appropriate angle of attack, so let's say whatever is your stall angle, let's say 16, or 14 or 15, what happens is this stagnation point moves underside your flapper switch, which is over here, and this gives you a type of warning. And then in modern aircrafts or modern airliners, you have an angle of attack vane. Alright, so the next one is angle of attack vane. So for this one, what happens? So I'm sure you have seen these vanes on modern airliners. They're on the fuselage, mostly on the forward end of the aircraft, which is called the nose. What happens when the airflow flows over it? It computes the rate of change of angle of attack, and then it gives you appropriate stall warning. And now we're going to study a type of stall which is very important. So it's called the super stall or the deep stall. So I'm sure you have seen aircrafts where the elevator is top here over the rudder, on the rudder. So this type of configuration is called T-tail, alright? So when you have swept wings and then when you have T-tail with along with swept wings, then you are prone to super stall or deep stall. And the main factor here for the super stall is gonna be swept wings out of these two. Alright? So I'll explain it to you. So let's say that this is your aircraft in normal condition, all right. So the airflow is flowing over here, all right, and then the elevator again, it being an aerofoil too, the air is flowing over here, it's accelerator over here. So what happens when you increase the angle of attack? All right, so first of all, it's swept wing. Let's say that you stall. So this is your swept wing, right? All right, so this is your swept wing. So when you stall, the issue is you stall your tip first, right? So what happens to your CP, the center of pressure, it moves forward and inward. What causes this, right? It causes nose up movement. So you're pitching up. So this is what happens when you have nose up tendency during stall. So this is, so okay. So have you? Let's say this is your aerofoil that is stalled, all right, and it has a nose up tendency. So let's say this is the transition point at the forward position, all right. So right after CP, all right. So this is a transition point, all right. So this was a smooth flow, and this is a turbulent flow, all right. So this turbulent airflow, what happens? So in T-tail, okay, so in a normal aircraft, the elevator would have been behind here, right? But no, but in the case of T-tail, you have elevated up here. So this turbulent airflow here, as you can see, this turbulent airflow is hitting the elevator. So you're not only the aileron effectiveness, but you're also losing your elevator effectiveness, which makes it impossible for the pilot to control the pitch of the aircraft, and it's gonna keep going nose up, which makes the situation worse. So to fix this, you need a stick pusher. It's very important in a T-tail aircraft with swept wings. All right. And then let's discuss accelerated stall. These are the type of stall. Okay, so this was super stall, deep stall. Then you have accelerated stall. All right. So what happens in a level flight? Let's say your aircraft is in a level flight. I'm gonna drop the back part. So this is your level flight. All right. So this is your lift force. This is your weight. Alright, the lift is balancing weight, so lift equals to weight basically. Alright, so what happens in a turn? So when you're turning, let's say you're turning now, okay, this and this is your wing, this is your wing. So the lift, this is your lift, but it has divided into two components. The vertical component, I'm gonna write vertical and then lift, alright, and this is gonna be a horizontal component, alright. I've explained this in the previous video, but I'll explain it again. So, and this is gonna be a weight because weight is not gonna change, right? Weight is vertically downwards. So this part is balancing your weight, and this is the part, this part is centripetal force that's pulling inside the turn. So since the lift has been divided, so you need to increase this. So what happens is that so if you don't, sorry, so yeah, so what happens if you don't increase your lift? Since this part is reduced, the weight is dominating, and then you will descend. And of course, you don't want to descend in a turn, right? So what you have to do is you have to increase your lift force, and the most practical way would be to increase the angle of attack. That means you have to pull the control column back, right? So basically, so when you're in a turn, your requirement for lift is increasing in a way, if it sounds correct. Your lift is not increasing, but your requirement of lift is increasing, right? This is increasing. So whenever your requirement of lift is increasing, instead of lift itself, what happens to your stall speed, which is Vs, it increases, which is a bad thing. All right. And also your load factor is increases. What is load factor? It's your lift by weight ratio. I hope you remember this. All right. So now we're going to discuss the different factors that will affect your stall speed. So when I'm talking about stall speed, there's a very basic thing I wanted to remember. It's a trick that whenever lift is increasing, it's a good thing. Whenever requirement of lift is increasing, it's a bad thing. And of course, you know this Vs, stall speed increases, it's bad. Stall speed decreases, it's good. Okay, so to be fair, when I was learning this as a student, because I studied all this when I wasn't flying, so I never understood why stall speed increasing is good, why stall speed decreasing, and increasing is bad, and stall speed decreasing is good. It never made sense to me. So I'll explain to you what this means. I'm sure most people already know, but for the people who don't, I'll tell you. So let's say you're flying at 100 knots, okay? So this is your aircraft. You're flying at 100 knots, all right? So you keep reducing your speed, you keep reducing your speed. Now you're at 40 knots. Let's say 50 knots. Let's say 50 knots, all right? Let's say if my stall speed were to be 45 knots, right? So this means I can't reduce my speed lesser than 45, right? At 45, I'm gonna stall. I'm gonna lose altitude, and right. So the lower the stall speed, that means the slower I can fly, right? It gives me a type of margin, right? I don't have to worry about my aircraft going slow and me stalling, right? So in a way, when your stall speed decreases, it's a good thing. This is just for the people who haven't flown an aircraft and are studying, so they have an idea. All right. So the first factor we're going to talk about is weight. All right. So tell me, if my weight increases, does my lift increase, or does my requirement of lift increase? Um, Tell me, what do you guys think? Of course, it's going to be the requirement of lift. If my weight increases, my requirement of lift increase. Hence, my stall speed is also going to increase. Alright. So now let's talk about load factor, which basically talks about bank when you're banking. Alright. So when you're banking, you just saw over here. When you're banking, your requirement of lift is increasing. Your lift is not increasing, but your requirement of lift is increasing. So again, uh, you bank, then your requirement of lift increases, and again your stall speed will increase in turn. And now let's say also over here, what happens to your stall angle? It remains constant. Your stall angle is gonna remain constant. I'll just write over here stall angle equals to constant. Stall, which means the 16-degree angle, right? It's gonna remain constant. Over here to stall angle equals to constant. So I want you guys to remember, okay, weight, there's both. Load factor, stall speed increases, stall angle constant. And all right, so let's discuss the third one. This is gonna be flaps. All right. Okay, so flaps. What happens with flaps? Your lift increases or lift command? Your lift increases. Okay, so lift increases. So it's a good thing. Then your stall speed decreases. Yeah, but what happens to your stall angle? It reduces. Just try to remember this. Okay. So the fourth one is gonna be slats. So what? So I'm sure everyone knows slabs, but I'll explain slats. So this is the leading edge, and this is your trailing edge. So you have flaps over here that increase your camber, right? And slats you have over here. Okay. So they make a type of opening over here so that air can re-enter and re-energize the body and boundary layer. So they basically add energy to the boundary layer. So they are increasing lift, so your stall speed reduces. But over here your stall angle increases since they are re-energizing your boundary layer. Alright. The next is gonna be CG position. So we're gonna talk about forward CG. The fifth one is gonna be forward CG. Alright, so with forward CG, what happens to your stall speed is it increases, alright. But with rearward CG, so what basically happens with forward CG is that your nose becomes heavy, so your aircraft becomes nose heavy. So there's a tendency of your aircraft to pitch down. So to counteract that, of course, you need more lift force, which means it is increasing the requirement of lift. So of course, your stall speed will increase. And okay, so here in case of forward CG, your stall angle is going to be constant. So with aft CG, what happens to your stall speed? It reduces, quite the opposite over here. But here in your stall angle, it remains constant. All right. I hope it. Wait, I'll just consistent. All right. I hope it makes sense. So let's talk about landing gear. So when your landing gear is down, all right. So it's increasing your drag, ISR drag to be exact, which is giving you nose down pitching movement. So you have to increase your lift, right, for because of this. So this is increasing the requirement of lift. So what happens to your stall speed? It increases. And your stall angle, it's constant over here. So I'm going to make this arrow. So now let's talk about thrust. All right. So what happens when your aircraft is reducing thrust? So let's say this is your aircraft, all right. So this is your thrust, right, and this is your weight, and this is your lift, all right. So now again I can divide thrust into two components, the vertical component and the horizontal component, all right. So if you see the vertical component, it's basically acting in the direction of lift and also opposing weights, right. So in a way, this thrust, what it's doing is helping you balance your weight. So with thrust, your stall speed is gonna reduce and your stall angle, which is your stall angle, is going to increase. All right, I hope it makes sense. So now let's talk about propeller slipstream. So you know what, so let's say this is your propeller, right? So let's say this is your multi-engine aircraft, these are your wings. All right, so you have your propeller over here. So what propellers do is, at when you're at low speed, low airspeed, and at high engine power, when your engine power is high, so the dynamic pressure within the propeller slipstream, so the air, because of this propeller is called slipstream air, so the dynamic pressure in this air is more than the free stream air. So basically this is like in a way it's helping you increase lift. So because of that, your stall speed reduces. I hope it makes sense. So now let's talk about Mach number. Mach number. So what happens? So when your aircraft is flying faster than Mach 0.4, the streamline pattern around the wing changes. All right. So what does this cause? It causes your CL max to reduce. All right. So because of this, what happens to your stall speed? Of course, it's going to increase. And what happens to your stall angle? It's going to remain constant. Now the 10th factor is going to be wing contamination and rain. Or you could even say snow. So of course, it's going to increase the aircraft weight and it's going to increase the drag. So this is going to increase your stall speed, but it's also going to reduce your stall angle. I hope it makes sense. So now let's talk about stall recovery. How do you recover from a stall? Alright, now let's say you have stalled your aircraft. So what you do is you pitch down. Alright, you have to reduce your angle of attack, right? And then you add power to, because you have lost a lot of altitude, so you add power. And then you use your rudders, not ailerons, but your rudders to keep your aircraft in level. So why do you want to keep it level? Because you don't want to spin. Remember I showed you that video. So what is spin? So when one wing, so let's say these are your two wings. So if one of them stalls before the other wing, your aircraft is going to spiral like this, right? So if it's spiraling, this is called spin. It's a type of stall when one wing has stalled more than the other wing. So the recovery is, so what you do for it is your power is going to be idle, aileron neutral. You don't use aileron here, okay? You use a rudder opposite. So if you're spinning in the left direction, you give the right rudder to prevent this movement. All right, I hope it makes sense. And then elevator down. So of course you want to reduce your angle of attack. All right. So this we are done with stall chapter. I hope you understood. And if you have any doubts, please feel free to ask in the comment sections. And please give me a like and subscribe my channel if you find my videos helpful.